Now that you've had the opportunity to see a variety of CSCS lessons in action, we're going to give you the opportunity to adapt and modify those CSCS lessons for your own needs. And then eventually we're going to show you how to create your own CSCS lessons from scratch. So just to recap, we have been looking at a variety of different activities, and those are always accessible from the sidebar within this site. And we've looked at 4 different activities specifically. In terms of biology, we looked at the mitosis activity. And when we were in the area of chemistry, we opened up and used the composition of biological molecules activity. When we were working with environmental earth and space sciences, we were looking at the hurricanes. And finally, when we were doing some physics activities, the one we looked at there was the density and buoyancy. So we've looked at 4 different activities, and now to try to understand how these activities are created and how to duplicate them yourselves. So there's a variety of different resources that Google and other organizations have created that are free and can be used in a CSCS lesson. So although we are hosting everything right now on a Google site, it's not necessary to host in a Google site to be able to make a CSCS lesson. Yet we believe it's probably the easiest approach, so that's what we're going to be referring to throughout this activity. So the key thing to remember is that we're housing everything on a website. It happens to be a Google site, a collaborative site that multiple people can develop and use if you give them privileges. Now, this is actually directly managed by your Google account. So if you were to request a Google account, you can simply go onto the internet and say Google account and then create your own. But we really believe it's the best way to do that is to create a Gmail account to correspond to that Google account. And that'll give you access to a huge number of resources. Here you can see my own account, and then if I was to click on the dashboard over here, you will see that the dashboard gives you a listing of the variety of resources that are accessible from your Google account. And so you can see that obviously I have a lot of users and so forth that are accessing my Google sites, and a lot of videos up there and so forth. But the nice thing is they're all referenced, they're all linked from my one single Gmail account. And so by having that one login and that one password, I can get access to all the various different accounts. So the Google account is primary. That's how you manage all of this host of resources. And you get access to that by creating a Gmail account, and then you use your Gmail login and password not only to control all of these resources, but also the users of those resources through mail groups and so forth in Gmail. And we'll show that to you in a different video. So you want to have a Google website. The Google website is going to be the hosting agency for all of those other resources. The next important thing is your Google Drive. Now your Google Drive is the location where you can have all sorts of various different documents, both the highly collaborative integrated documents here that Google puts together, as well as more static individual developed resources like Adobe Acrobat and Microsoft Office. The key thing is everything in this gray zone right here can be housed in Google Drive and used in your CSCS lesson. Now, in addition, you can go out to other resources and so forth, and we'll give you examples of those, where you go into a photo album. We're going to be using Picasa Web, which is also kind of the inverse of a Google Plus photo album. Then we are going to be using YouTube videos, also another Google resource. And then but you can go out to other resources and so forth as well. There's Prezi, there's word cloud resources, et cetera, many different resources in a highly interactive CSCS environment. So the key thing again is to make a Google website and then to host all of these resources on that Google site. So you can call out a form, for example, where students will enter responses to questions, and then that data will come out in the form of a spreadsheet and then appear in your website. And so we're going to give you examples of how that's done just in the various different activities that we have used right here. So you may remember when we did the chemistry one, where we're looking at the composition of biological molecules. Now, first of all, you may have noticed that there was a video here that showed a series of animals and so forth. Well, this video was actually simply a Google Plus or Picasa web album. So all the photos here were simply housed in, you can see a Picasa web album right there. And so what we did is we simply took that and linked it in here, and simply with a simple command says go out and get that album and turn it into a slideshow. So by having all those pictures in a specific album, we could then call it up and use them all at once. Now, just to show you that photo albums can be very extensive, you can see I have a series of photo albums here. Any one of these photo albums could be used to make a slideshow like you've just seen. So there was a case there where we're calling out a photo album for use in a regular CSCS lesson. If you looked farther down here, you saw just a single picture. Well, this picture was in another photo album, and we were referencing just an individual picture alone. So by hosting the photographs in a Picasa web album, you can show either slideshows or you can show individual pictures without any difference in access, just a simple link difference, I should say. So now it's important to remember that that with the CSCS lessons, you're trying to collect data from students. So there's two ways to do that. One is to have them enter it directly into the spreadsheet, but the other is to put it into a form. So for example, this was a form we used in the composition of biological molecules activity. So you can see here that you were asked to identify the name of a molecule, put its classification, and then determine how many of each of the elements were in a molecule of that before you finally submitted it there. Now when you submit a form, it goes into a corresponding spreadsheet. So in this particular activity, our spreadsheet was showed right here is the raw data. So this is the spreadsheet, which is a Google document into which all of this data goes. And so you can see that the form responses appear right here. And then from those, you can use the spreadsheet activities, spreadsheet resources we learned in the first lesson to make various different calculations and eventually determine how to represent that data graphically, as you see us doing right here. So the in this activity here, what we did is we basically were using the Picasa photo album, Picasa web photo album, to project a slideshow of the various different things in which you'd have biological molecules. Then we asked students to go off-site to another resource off-site where they were going to do some kind of analysis. That's in this etc. one where they were linking to a resource that allowed them to look at the structure of various biological molecules. So they were using something in this huge category down here of etc. Then they were putting data into a form, and that form was putting data into a spreadsheet which we could then analyze and project back to the students. So the entire class could see the results in graphic form of that. Now, let's just give an example from the hurricane one. So in the hurricane one, although we didn't show it in the presentation, that we were able to put movies and so forth into this. And as those movies were simply YouTube videos, and we can insert those YouTube videos directly into a Google website, as you can see we've done right here. In addition, we had a lot of other resources on this one here that people could use. Again, there was static pictures that were coming from a Picasso web album. But like before, they were going to some external resource, in this case the hurricane tracking tool. So this is in that etc. category. This is something owned by NOAA, but since we're currently in the government shutdown, you can tell when this video is made, that's temporarily inaccessible, but should be accessible back to you when this is live. And so it was going to an external resource, and then the students were entering data here. So again, here they're going to another form. So this is another form, and as it goes through this form, they answer the various different questions, and that form is once again dumping data into a corresponding spreadsheet. So that information is going into a table, and from that table we can then analyze data by graphing it and actually looking at the responses in graphic form. So once again, if you can see what we were doing in that one, is we went out to an external resource. In this case, it was the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, where we were plotting all of those hurricanes. We then took that data, and the students entered it into a form. The form popped it into a spreadsheet, which we then configured in such a way that we could graph the data, so the students could then graph and analyze that information. So in the density one, you'll notice again a very similar pattern, only here they were actually collecting their own data. So what they were doing is they were going out and looking at density blocks and so forth, and so as opposed to looking at data on the web, they were collecting their own individual data, massing it, looking at the volume, and then determining if it sank or float. And based upon that that data, they once again entered it. Only this time we asked them to put it directly into a data table. So in this case, we omitted the form. We simply allowed them to type directly into this form, and all these people could be typing into this same form simultaneously. And so you would see that whole data kind of constructed in front of your very own eyes. And then once again, we took that data and we graphed it in form so they could see the relationship between the mass volume ratio and whether the object sank or float. So in looking back on our tools again, we could see in this case we went into the etc. category here. This time that that etc. category was going and making your own collection of data. In other words, collecting data themselves, getting the blocks, massing the blocks, looking at the volume. But then rather than putting it into a form, we had to put it directly into a spreadsheet. So it eliminated this form, and the reason why we did that is it makes it a little bit faster, a little bit easier to create the activity, and a little easier just to adjust it at a later time. Then we just created another tab within the spreadsheet, and on that tab we plotted the data, which then could be visible also from the spreadsheet again, from the website again. So the website was the hosting. So if we were to look back at that data, you can see that data can come back here, and then they could use the rest of their document here to complete the activity. So when we were looking at these activities, you can see that we were using a variety of resources. In future activities, we'll show how to use documents and presentations and drawings. But I think you've gotten the idea right here that a CSCS activity is first coordinated through the website, and the website will call resources from a variety of different sources, whether they be within your Google Drive, which are the Google collaborative documents, as well as any other static documents that you tend to post there, as well as multimedia through YouTube, your photo album, Prezi, and other things. And then all of this is actually managed through your Google account, which you can get by simply getting a Gmail account. And once again, just to show that once you get that account, you will be able to do things like analyzing the traffic to your website, being able to create blogs, putting calendars, coordinating all of your users and access privileges through contacts, being able to make interactive word processing documents, looking at managing your user base through direct email, creating interactive discussion groups, and you can see it goes on and on and on in terms of the various different resources that you have. So the most important thing is to get that Google account. You do that by just creating a Gmail account. Go on the web, create a Gmail account, and then look at your dashboard and in your Google account. And then from there, you can start to create the variety of resources that you've seen.